Hello everyone, this is Dr. Satish S. Bornare, Department of Genetics and Plant Breeding, Kekewak College of Agriculture, Nashik. Today we will see the topic Plant Ideotype. So friends, this term Ideotype was introduced by scientist Donald while working on wheat crop, and this ideotype means a form of denoting an idea. So according to the Donald, the ideotype is a biological model which is expected to perform or behave in a predictable manner within a defined environment. Means if there is a defined environment, then this biological model will perform in a predictable manner. So this ideotype concept was developed by the scientist Donald, and more specifically the crop ideotype is a plant model which is expected to yield greater quantity of grains, fibers, oils or other useful products when developed as a cultivars. Means in case of crop ideotype, our main emphasis is on a yield of an economic product. So crop ideotype is a plant model which give us a economic product in a greater quantity when we develop it as a cultivar. And this plant ideotype having different namings such as model plant type, ideal plant model plant type and ideal plant type. These are also same as a crop ideotype given by the Donald. These plant ideotypes are having different types as per the Donald and Hamlin 1976. There are three major types of the ideotype. First one is a isolation ideotype, second one is a competition ideotype, and third one is a crop ideotype. So what is isolation ideotype? So this is the model plant type that perform best when the plants are space planted. So as its name indicated, isolation means when we grow this plant model in a space planted, then it perform better. So this type of ideotype are called as a isotype ideotype. Or in case of cereals, isolation ideotypes is a lax, free tillering, leafy, spreading plant that is able to explore the environment as a fully possible, and it does not perform well at crop densities because crop densities are much closer, and that's why this ideotype not better perform at a crop densities. They require a space planting. Then second one is a competition ideotype. These competition ideotypes perform well generally in a heterogeneous population, and we all know that heterogeneous population means segregating generations. That means the up to and onward generation which are segregating generations. And in case of the cereals, this competition ideotypes is a tall, leafy, free tillering, and that able to shed its less aggressive neighbors so that it compete with others and thereby gain a larger share of nutrients and waters. So these are the competition ideotypes. And in case of annual seed crops, such ideotypes has the features like annual habit, tallness, leafy canopy, tillering or branching, or having seed size, greater seed size, speed of germination and root character, so that it compete with its competitor or other crops. So these are the competition ideotypes. Third one is a crop ideotype. As its name indicate, it performs best at commercial crop densities because this crop ideotypes is a poor competitor and it performs well when it's surrounded by plants of same form, that is the same plant, but it performs less well when it is surrounded by plants of other forms, that is likewise a competition ideotype or isolation ideotype. And in case of cereals, this crop ideotype is erect, sparsely tilled plant with small erect leaves and is able to survive in a highly competitive situation of being surrounded by the plants of same form. So these crop ideotypes perform better when the crop plants are planted in a commercial crop densities. So according to this Donald and Hamlin, there are three major types of the ideotype. Rest of all, there are additional types also, likewise market ideotype, then climatic ideotype, edaphic ideotype, or disease and or pest ideotypes. So these are the different types of ideotypes. Then what are the features of these different types of ideotypes? The features of isolation ideotype, competition ideotype, and crop or communal ideotype. As we see earlier, these different types of ideotypes performs in different conditions. Isolation isotypes are best perform in space planting, while these competition ideotypes are best perform in segregating generation like F2 and onwards, which is heterogeneous generation. Then crop or communal ideotype best perform in a dense monoculture, means of a same species plants. And this isolation ideotype performance is measured in terms of grain yield per plant. Same as in case of competition ideotype, its performance is also measured in grain yield per plant. But in case of crop ideotype, the performance is measured is grain yield per hectare. And the best performance in which plant community? So isolation ideotype perform well in widely spaced plant or rows, while the competition ideotype perform best when there is a segregating generation and varietal mixture of plant at commercial crop densities. And crop or communal ideotype best perform in commercial crops or single genotype plant at a crop densities. And the isolation ideotype is likelihood of being peaked when F2 is space planted. In case of competition ideotype, it is in early generation of yield test, while in case of crop or communal ideotype, it is in yield tests of homozygous and homogeneous progenies. So these are the different features of the different ideotypes. Then what are the characteristics of an ideotype or crop ideotype? So the ideal plant type or crop ideotype should possess the different characteristics such as weak competitor. So these crop ideotype should be a weak competitor. That means the individual plants of an ideotype will compare with each other to minimum degree when grown as a crop. So this is the weak competitor. This concept of weak competitor is central to the crop ideotype. An ideotype perform relatively poor in isolation and is poor competitor with other genotypes. So the ideal characteristics of crop ideotype is it should be a weak competitor. Then next one is it should be a most efficient in utilizing its environmental resources. That is, it requires minimum resources for producing each unit of dry matter. So it is more efficient. Third one is moving goal. So this crop ideotype or ideotype is always a moving goal. It changes with alternation or changes in environment. Next one is a high harvest index. So harvest index, the ideotype having high harvest index, that means the economical yield is greater that to biological yield. As we all know that harvest index is a ratio of economic yield to the biological yield. As there is more economic yield having high harvest ratio, so that the crop ideotype is must having high harvest index. Then conscious and plant selection. The crop ideotype is having a plant selection or conscious plant selection, because crop ideotype bears plants from which may be overlooked in the process of visual selection from the segregating generation, so that it should be planned accordingly. Next to that, it involves concurrent modification of the environment. So as we see earlier or discuss earlier, that this is the moving goal, so that the crop ideotype involve all the concurrent modification of the environment. So these are the some of the characteristics of ideotype. Then ideotype breeding. What is ideotype breeding? Ideotype breeding is a method of crop improvement which aims to enhance the genetic yield potential by modifying individual traits to their predefined optimum levels. So our aim is to increase yield, but for that, in case of ideotype breeding, the individual traits are modified to their optimum levels, so that we achieve the greater yield. And the different features of ideotype breedings are: first one is emphasis on individual trait. So this ideotype breeding is emphasis majorly on individual trait. Likewise, morphological and physiological trait which enhance the yield. The value of each character is specified before initiation of the breeding work, so that we majorly emphasis on individual trait. Second one is includes yield enhancing trait. So this ideotype breeding must include the yield contributing traits, such as various character which are correlate with the yield, and out of that only those character which exhibit positive association with yield are included in this model. Next to that, exploit physiological variations. So the genetic difference exists for various physiological characters, such as photosynthetic efficiency, photorespiration, nutrition uptake, etc. Ideotype breeding makes use of genetically controlled physiological variation in increasing the crop yields besides various agronomic traits. So in this case, the ideotype breeding gives or exploit the physiological variation rather than the various agronomic traits. Next one is a slow and continuous process. This ideotype breeding is a slow method of cultivar development, because incorporation of various desirable characters from different sources into single genotype take a long time. But It is a continuous process because new ideotypes have to be developed to meet the changing and increasing demands of the farmers. So that it is a continuous and slow process or having slow progress. Then next to that, designing of a model. In ideotype breeding, the phenotype of new variety to be developed is specified in terms of morphological or physiological traits in advance. That means before the starting or initiation of breeding work, the model is designed before that in well advance. Next feature is interdisciplinary approach. So the ideotype breeding, as we see or discuss earlier, it is a slow process or having continuous progress. It requires the attention of multidisciplinary approach. That is, interdisciplinary approach involves scientists from various fields such as genetics, breeding, physiology, pathology, entomology, etc. So it is an interdisciplinary approach. So these are the different features of the ideotype breeding. Next is the step involved in ideotype breeding. So this is very important one, how the ideotype breeding works. So that first step is defining the phenotypic goals. The traits that are to be modified are firstly defined, and then level of phenotypic expression to be achieved must be specified. So in this first step, the roles of individual trait in determining yield are determined and its importance is specified. A breeder may usually opt for the traits that are easy to score, and this is the first step in which we define our phenotypic goal in advance. Second to that, creation of adequate genetic diversity. To justify the breeding effort, the trait to be modified must possess sufficient greater diversity. And as we all know that without genetic diversity, we cannot create or select a better one. So that the second step is creation of adequate genetic diversity. The genotypes to be used as a parents in hybridization must have broad genetic base and wider adaptability. The parents should belongs to the elite gene pool. If the desired genes are available in unimproved genes pool, they should be first integrated into lines having good agronomic value. These lines are then used in the crossing program. But the main theme is that the lines or parents used in this breeding program must have a broader genetic base and having genetic diversity. Third step is selection of plants or lines having desired phenotype. The segregating generation, that is F2 and onwards, are handled according to a suitable breeding scheme to isolate numbers of lines which exhibit the desired level of trait under modification. So in this ideotype breeding, we emphasis on a particular trait. So we select those traits when it exhibit the desired level of desired level of amplification or modification under the selection. Then last one is continued breeding effort. An ideotype breeder must be prepared for continued breeding and evaluation effort. It may be necessary to conduct the several cycles of breeding to break under undesirable linkage and try the trait in question in different genetic background and under different cultural practices in order to increase the livelihood of modified traits leading to increased yield. So this is the continuous process, and we have to continue up to the desired yield level is obtained, and after that we can release the elite genotype as a cultivar through this method. So these are the important steps of ideotype breeding. There are some crop ideotypes, and different scientists give different criteria or different characters on different crops. So the ideotype of wheat, it was firstly proposed by Donald in 1968 for optimum environment having adequate nutrient and water supply. And according to this Donald, in case of wheat, the wheat plant must have a short strong stem, then erect leaves, then few small leaves, then large ear and erect ear, presence of awns and single culm. So these are the ideal plant type in case of wheat. The short strong stem, it reduces the risk of the lodging and amount of photosynthesis invested in the stem production. So according to this Donald, the plant must have short strong stem. Then erect leaves, nearly vertical leaves permits inadequate illumination of greater area of leaf surface than long or horizontal dropping leaves. So in case of wheat we preferred erect leaves. Then few small leaves. In a monocot plant like wheat, leaves serve as mainly as a photosynthetic respiring and transpiring surfaces. Therefore, few small leaves per unicorn plant are desirable as the planting densities will be high. So, few small leaves are preferred in case of wheat. Then, large ear, large number of florets per year, that is per unit of diameter of above ground part is desirable, since wheat ear is a limiting sink of the photosynthesis, and the ear head of the wheat must be a larger one. So this is the favorable character or better character, that means the large ear head having number of more fertile floret per year. Then erect ear, this erect ear ensures illumination of ears from all sides and thereby greater photosynthesis. Means if the ear is erect, then there is a chances of illumination from all the side. So this is the another important character. Next to that, presence of awns. These awns provide substantial photosynthetes to the developing grains, especially under semi-arid condition. This is because these awns are the geroptic structures and hence important ones. So in case of semi-arid situation, these awns are important one. So the ideotype of wheat must have the awns. Then last one is a single culm. In tillering genotype, at least some of the tiller do not produce ears. This represents the waste of resources and additional useless competition. This problem will not be encountered in uniculm genotypes. And non-tillering mutants are available in different crops, and monoculm lines have been developed in wheat. So single culm means the above ground stem of the wheat, and when there is a single culm, the wheat perform better. So these are the different traits or different features of the wheat ideotype according to the Donald. Then rice. It was first introduced by Maxima 1957 and later by Jennings in 1964, and in 1969 Chandler proposed the ideotype of dwarf rice as follows. So according to the Chandler, the rice plant having shorter culm length, that is 100 centimeter or less, is preferred. Then greater culm diameter, which increases culm strength. So this rice plant having greater culm diameter is preferred. Lower relative internode elongation under heavy nitrogen application. So the under heavy nitrogen application, the relative internode elongation is lower, and plant having lower internode elongation is preferred over having the greater internode elongation. Short erect leaves of medium width. Here again the leaves is in the erect direction, erect leaves with short leaves and medium width. Then high tillering capacity. This does not reduce the yield potential in rice. Means this high tillering capacity is directly proportional or directly contribute to the yield, so that high tillering capacity is preferred according to the Chandler and co-workers in case of rice. Then more panicles per meter square. So if there is more number of panicles per meter square, then it is beneficial. And high, that is 55% or more harvest index. Harvest index is nothing but the ratio of economical yield upon biological yield. So the rice plant having 55% or more than that harvest index is good one. Then next is maize. In 1975, Mock and Pierce proposed ideal plant type of maize. According to this Mock and Pierce, the maize ideal plant types having stiff vertically oriented leaves above the ear. Here again vertically oriented leaves are preferred. Then maximum photosynthetic efficiency, that means higher source to sink relationship. Then efficient translocation of photosynthate into the grain. The translocation of photosynthate, that is source to sink translocation, and here the source is leaf while sink is grain. So efficient translocation of this source to sink relation is good and convert into the yield, that is more number of grains. So it is preferred in case of maize. Then short interval between pollen shed and silk emergence. So in case of maize, the maize plant having the male and female at different places. So the male inflorescence in case of maize is called as tassel. It is located at the top. It is male inflorescence, while female inflorescence or female cob or silk is present at the lower side. And the difference between these two in a days play an important role in pollination. So the short interval between pollen shed and silk emergence is a preferred one in case of maize. Then small tassel size. Tassel means the male inflorescence present at the top. So small tassel size is preferred. Then photoperiod insensitivity means maize is a likewise day neutral crop. They are insensitive to photoperiod, so it is grown in throughout the year. So in case of maize, photoperiod insensitivity is preferred. Then cold tolerance, as we see, it is grown in around the year, so that it is tolerant to the cold, so that the yield losses are minimized in case of winter season. Then long grain filling period. Long grain filling period. So as grain filling period increases, there are chances of a higher yield. So the long grain filling period is preferred over the short. So these are the different characteristics of ideal plant type in case of maize. Then barley. According to Rasmussen 1987, the plant type of 6-row barley. So friends, in case of barley, there are two types of barley, 6-row and 2-row barley. So this, according to Rasmussen, the ideal type plants of 6-row barleys are given here, that these plants of barley having short stature means the dwarf plants is preferred, then having long awns. As we see earlier in case of wheat, these awns are important geroptic adaptations, so that the barley plants should have the long awns, as it control the transpiration. Then high harvest index. So as in case of rice, we have already seen that 55% or more harvest index is preferred. So same as in case of barley also, the plant ideal type having high harvest index, then high biomass also, then high kernel weight and more kernel number. So these are the characters which directly correlate with yield. So in case of barley, we preferred high kernel weight as well as high kernel number also. So these are the some of the characters suggested by Rasmussen in 1987 in case of barley ideal plant type. Next one is a cotton. As cotton grow in irrigated cultivation as well as rain-fed cultivation, so Singh and co-worker in 1974 suggested the ideal plant type for irrigated cultivation, in which plants of short stature, that is 90 to 120 centimeter, then compact and sympodial plant habit making pyramidal shape. So this is the another one ideal characteristics, that the plant having compact and sympodial plant habit making pyramidal shape. Then determinate fruiting habit with unimodal distribution of bowling. So determinate fruiting means there is a clear-cut difference between vegetative and reproductive growth. Once vegetative growth is stopped, then reproductive growth is started. So this is called a determinate fruiting habit, and having unimodal distribution of bowling means the bowling start at a time. Then short duration, that is 150 to 165 days. This is preferred in case of cotton, as it reduces the cost of crop management and allows double cropping. So this one is important aspect as related to farmers and breeders also, because farmers and breeders both prefer the short duration crop varieties. So this is the important one. Then responsive to the high fertilizer dose. So it must be, the plant model must be responsive to the high fertilizer dose. Then high degree of interplant competitive ability. It means the ability to perform well at a closer spacing, that is to use environmental resources efficiently. So as we see in case of crop ideotype, so that the crop ideotype can be well performed in a closer spacing. Then high degree of resistance to the insect pest and diseases. Then high physiological efficiency means high photosynthetic rate. Then in addition, the bowl size is proposed to be in between 3.5 to 4 gram, and there should be synchrony of bowling in flush of the flowering. That means the bowl size is 3.5 to 4 gram, and there is a synchrony means the flush of flowering or flush of flowering in bowling is in synchrony. That means they should be present at a time. Then the plant ideotype or crop ideotype for rain-fed cultivation in case of cotton, and this is proposed by Singh and Narayanan in 1993. And according to them, for rain-fed cultivation, the cotton having short stature like 75 to 80 centimeter and compact plant habit. Then intermediate growth habit with at least 2 monopodia. Here intermediate growth habit means the vegetative and reproductive growth are intermingled. Then few smaller and thick leaves with sparse hairiness. So in case of cotton, this hairiness play an important role in insect resistance, as the hairiness varieties are more resistant than other varieties to the bollworm and other insects. So in case of cotton, this hairiness is important criteria. Then medium to big ball size, that is 3.5 to 4 gram. Then this ideal plant type or crop plant must be responsive to the nutrients. Then high degree of resistance to the insect and diseases, and then synchronous to the bowling habit. So the bowling should be start at the same time. So these are the some of important features of ideotype in case of rain-fed cultivation of cotton. Then sorghum and bajra. Swaminathan in 1972 has listed several desirable attributes of the crop ideotype in case of these sorghum and bajra. First one is a better protein quantity and quality. So protein quantity and quality is preferred in case of sorghum and bajra. Then suitability to mechanization. Then photo and thermo insensitive. So these are the common breeding objectives also. So we prefer the varieties or plant type which are suitable to mechanization or photo and thermo insensitive, means there is no effect on temperature and light on this plant type. High productivity per unit of water, means there is water productivity. That means there is more crop in each drop of water. Then high productivity per day. Then crop canopies that can retain and fix maximum of CO2 so that yield is increased. Then superior population performance. So these are the some important features or desirable attributes of the crop ideotypes. Superior population performance means it should be a weak competitor. Then low photorespiration, then high response to the nutrients, and high photosynthetic ability, and last one is multiple resistance to the insects and diseases. These are the common points as we discussed earlier in various cereals. So these are the important several attributes or desirable attributes in case of sorghum and bajra. So what are the merits of ideotype breeding? Ideotype breeding is an effective method of increasing yield It is an effective method of breaking yield barrier. So it is an alternative to the traditional one, in which we, with the help of ideotype breeding, we break the yield barrier. It provides solution to the many problem at a time. At a time we can solve or find solution to the many problem at a time, emphasizing on a single trait at a time. Then value of various morphological and physiological traits are specified, and each character contributes toward the increasing yield. So as we see earlier, this ideotype breeding emphasis on morphological and physiological traits that are directly contributes toward the yield, so that we can break the yield barriers, which is not possible in case of traditional breeding. So this is the major merits of the ideotype breeding. Then it is multidisciplinary approach. As we see earlier, the ideotype breeding requires the collaboration of genetics, physiologist, entomologist, pathologist, so that it is a multidisciplinary approach. It is an efficient method of developing variety for specific situation or environment. So that means that the ideotype breeding is a situation specific or environment specific, because we develop ideal plant type according to the environment in predictable way, so that it is efficient method for developing variety for specific environment. Then last one, it utilizes unimproved gene pool in order to generate desired level of variability. So unimproved gene pool is a resource or source for that ideotype breeding. That's why it is utilizes the unimproved gene pool and generate a desired level of variability. So these are the important merits of ideotype breeding. So there are some demerits also. Let us see one by one. Ideotype breeding is not suitable, not substitute, but it is a supplement for traditional breeding. So it is, as we see earlier, plant breeding, ideotype breeding is having the advantage, some of the advantage, but despite that, it is not substitute to the traditional breeding, but it is a supplement for traditional breeding. Then ideotype is a moving object which changes with changes in knowledge, new requirement, national policy, etc. So this ideotype breeding is a moving goal. As we see earlier, it is a moving goal and it is changed with changes in knowledge, policy or requirement. So this is not the permanent solution. This is the major demerit of the ideotype breeding. Then ideotype is a slow method of cultivar development, as it's involve combining different features from different sources. So this is the cumbersome task of the ideotype breeding, is that it is a slow method, as it's involve the combining different features from the different sources in a single genotype. So this is the major demerits of the ideotype breeding. Then incorporation of many desirable traits from different sources into single genotype is a difficult task due to the presence of tight linkage between desirable and undesirable traits. When we transfer the better character or desirable traits or character from the different sources into a single genotype, there is a problem of linkage, and we also called it as a linkage drag. That means when we transfer desirable character, with that the undesirable characters are also transfer, and due to that tight linkage between these two traits, sometimes this ideotype breeding found very difficult or having a cumbersome task to break these tight linkage between desirable and undesirable traits. It is difficult to identify individual traits that enhance yield universally in limited genetic and environmental situation. So practically it is very difficult that to identify the individual trait that enhance yield character in a very limited genetic stock or environmental situation. For that we have to search a large genotypes. So this is the another demerits of the ideotype breeding. Then use of physiological and biochemical traits in ideotype concept is cumbersome, costly and time consuming. As we discussed earlier, these traits are very use of these traits are very cumbersome, costly and time consuming. Then it is necessary to give higher priority to obtain genetic diversity for a single trait, so that we emphasis on the single trait, and that's why it is very necessary that we have to give higher priority on a single trait. Then it requires a team efforts to generate information of complex interaction involving gene, traits and environment. So we discussed earlier that it is a multidisciplinary approach, but it is sometimes found as a demerit of ideotype breeding, because it requires the team efforts to generate the information of complex interaction that involve genes, traits or environment. Then transfer of traits from unimproved gene pool is necessary, which require considerable breeding efforts. So these unimproved gene pool are nothing but the sometimes wild or weedy forms or another forms of the genotypes or gene pool, and transfer from the characters from such an unimproved gene pool is very cumbersome, and this is again limitations or demerits of the ideotype breeding. Then there is a difference of ideotype breeding and traditional breeding. Let us see. In case of traditional breeding, the major objective is defined before the initiation of breeding program, while in case of ideotype breeding, the conceptual theoretical model is prepared before the initiation of breeding program. Then in case of traditional breeding, value of each character is not fixed in advance, but in case of ideotype breeding, we have to define the value of each character in advance. Then in case of traditional breeding, the phenotype of a new variety is not specified in advance, while in case of ideotype breeding, it is specified in advance. Then in case of traditional breeding, selection is focused on yield and other character, while in case of ideotype breeding, it is selection is focused on individual plant character. As we see earlier, it is totally emphasis on, in case of ideotype breeding, we totally emphasize on individual plant characters. In case of traditional breeding, plant characters are included such as morphological and economic character, while in case of ideotype breeding, morphological, physiological and biochemical characters are plant characters are included. In this traditional breeding is based on improved gene pool, while the ideotype breeding is based on unimproved gene pool. Then generation of genetic diversity does not generate deliberately in case of traditional breeding, while in case of ideotype breeding, the genetic diversity is generated deliberately. Then nature and speed of the cultivar development is simple and rapid in case of traditional breeding, while it is slow and difficult in case of ideotype breeding. Here are some of the examples of climate resilient crop varieties for Maharashtra. Here there are different crops, and these varieties are suitable for different environmental conditions under the different zones, and the varieties having source of different university or different research station. So this is the climate resilient crop varieties suggested for Maharashtra state. In case of wheat, these varieties are suitable for drought stress and released by the different universities or research station. So here is the list for wheat, maize, then sorghum, then rice, cotton, soybean and cotton, and these are the different varieties which are suitable for different environmental conditions and different zones, and the source of availability is given here. So thank you friends, this is for educational purpose only and references are as below. Thanks once again.